Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife overview slash kind of review. This is a discontinued knife to share with you guys. This is the Spyderco and Peter Rossetti Nirvana, based on the original custom. This knife has been around for a very long time. It is long discontinued, but that doesn't stop me from doing a review on it. It's just always something that I've been a little bit interested in getting my hands on, and thanks to my good friend at Antech7 on Instagram, I was able to get one to take a look at. So give him a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thanks so much for supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and some other exclusive benefits, there is of course a link down in the description. Your support would absolutely mean the world to me. All right, so I will be, like I said, this is discontinued. I'll be linking Spyderco knives in general down in the description if you'd like to take a look at some other stuff they offer. But this knife is one that if you want to acquire it, you'll have to go to the secondary market. Let me start off by saying that Peter Rossetti is a knife designer that, in my eyes, creates some of the most beautiful lines on a knife that I've ever seen. I very much like Peter Rossetti designs, and I've reviewed a number of them on this channel. No customs, but lots of knives that were collaborative efforts between him and some other great knife companies. I just really like Peter Rossetti knives. I think they look good. This knife originally came in at $440-ish. What do they go for on the secondary market? I have no idea. Should you pay more money for one on the secondary market? That's entirely up to you. I'm going to give my thoughts on this knife, but keep in mind, this knife has been discontinued for a couple of years, so there are a couple of design elements here that have sort of, aged in contrast with today's knife world. Let's go ahead and get a measurement on this guy if I can find my tape measure there. Overall length is a big knife. 8.75 inches overall. Blade length is coming in at about 3.75. Cutting edge is coming in at about 3.7. Yeah, big knife for sure. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. You can see there, definitely a big knife. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7.25 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? This knife is running on bearings, and it's okay. I mean, in terms of, how easy it is to deploy, it's smooth. It does not fall shut. It's more of a shake shut, right? There's a little bit of, it's not like grindiness. It's just a little tighter than a lot of knives, by today's standard on bearings, but it's definitely smooth. So something interesting I found out here. So internally, after reading some stuff on blade forms and some other things, I haven't taken this apart, but a lot of times, with bearings, you really want them contacting steel on both sides. So sometimes there's a little washer in there, and the other side contacts the blade face, which is also steel. And that's because titanium is often softer than, it is softer than steel bearings or ceramic bearings. A lot of people worry about that because it wears away over time. So these oddly, apparently, are facing in a way that makes it to where they're contacting steel on one side and titanium on the other. A lot of people worry about that. I'm sure over a long period of time that might be cause for concern. I've taken apart my hinders many times, and you guys know that my XM18 is actually titanium on both sides. And while the stock version of the XM18, I believe, has it set up to where I think either way the bearings are going to run on titanium. But anyways, the bearings on at least one side of my hinder definitely contact directly titanium, and they are steel bearings. I have never had an issue with that. That titanium scale has been on so many hinders, run on so many, it's been running on bearings constantly for probably since the tri-way pivot system came out. I've never had a problem with that. Will it affect a knife 10 years down the road after use? I don't know, honestly. It's just something to point out with this knife. You guys can decide for yourself if you consider that an issue. But anyways, the action feels good. The detent's great. It's very snappy. I'll give you guys a look at the detent. Click. Nice click into place. Definitely a heavier detent than the Paysan. A lot of you guys probably wondering, considering this is also a Peter Rizzenti design and an integral. I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, is the detent heavier than the Paysan? Yes, it is. The access to the thumb hole's okay. And for the reverse flick, you got a little bit of room. This one's more up than it is out. And I've found that I've actually had to reposition my hand a little bit in contrast with some other Spydercos to make it do that. But it does do that. It's very easy to play with. Man, right here, when it locks into place, it is such a snap. The tension on that lock bar is just like, bam, and it's got a nice sound to it. I'll let you guys listen to it while I'm not yelling. Ooh, nice. I like that. It doesn't need to be, but it is, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of nice in the lockout. I like feeling that. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. Get out my handy-dandy WIA bit selector and WIA magnetic driver, two items that are very recommendable and very inexpensive. You can find them down at the very bottom of my description. I believe the pivot is going to be a T8. Check that here real quick. It might be bigger. Yeah, okay, it's going to be bigger. Maybe it's a T10. Let's make sure here. Yeah, T10. Okay. I'll just kind of default go with a T8. Yeah, okay, that's a T10. And there are no other screws other than the pocket clip screws, which are T6. By the way, this is, as far as I understand it, is a D-shaped pivot barrel, so it's not free spinning. I like that. It's a nice thing about integrals is that there's really not a lot you have to do to get the blade out of there. You really just have to remove the pivot and then just pull the blade out. The bearings are not loose. They are caged, as far as I know. So it should be pretty easy, you know, if you like to take your knives apart, clean them, put them back together. That's the nice thing. One of the nice things about an integral is that it just makes that process really, really easy. That's fantastic. I have no issue with that whatsoever. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3 real quick here. You can see that this is not an overly thick knife. In fact, it looks to be at maximum thickness, about exactly the same as the Spyderco Para 3. Some heavy chamfering and a little bit, I don't know, we call it contouring. It appears to be flat on top. Heavy chamfering giving the impression of contouring or rounding, which is nice. So it is definitely longer than both the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, but because we don't have that hump right there, it's nowhere near as tall. And like I just showed, at maximum thickness, it's about the same. It is all one piece of titanium though, so that's going to add a little bit of extra heft to it. And on the inside, take a look here. God, I love that snap. Titanium's not milled out on the inside, which would be pretty difficult to do, you know, on a block of, and integrals are all milled from one piece of titanium, so that would be, I don't know if that's something that's possible. Maybe it is, and I just don't know what I'm talking about. 150 thousandths on the blade stock. So it's big knife, fairly thick blade stock, not a lot of milling, but not an overly thick, you know, not overly thick like dimensionally. It's just a lot of mass to the material. Okay, not bad. Actually, I was convinced this was going to be over 5 ounces. 4.73 ounces, not bad at all considering how big of a knife this is and how much material we're looking at here, so I don't really have a problem with that. If you like to carry smaller, lighter knives, this isn't going to be for you. It's also not going to be legal in a lot of places, so check your local laws. If you like to carry full-size knives and you wear jeans, regular jeans on a regular basis, then you're going to feel right at home with this, right? But it just depends on what you've been carrying, what you consider big. I like to carry knives between 4 and 6.5 ounces, roughly. I like to carry full-size knives. So this is a little longer than I normally like to carry, but it's well within the weight range, and the profile makes it easy to carry. So I don't have an issue with that at all. Did we go over everything there? I think that we did. Okay, let's talk about the profile here. So we have titanium on both sides. It's kind of a dark tumbling, and then we have these lines, all over these little milling lines. That's neat. It's interesting that they, have added some busyness to an otherwise very plain titanium scale. Some people absolutely love these lines, and some people don't. I'm kind of leaning towards I kind of wish it wasn't there, but I like a very plain monochromatic look. That's kind of my style. They are not, they're lines that you can't really feel. They're just aesthetic lines, so they don't take away from any sort of potential utility, but they don't add anything either. They're just lines. They're a characteristic on this knife that makes it very easily identifiable. This knife, every time it pops up, people know unquestionably that is, number one, clearly a Peter Rizzenti design, and very clearly the Spyderco Nirvana. It's just kind of become a part of this knife. So it is what it is. I really would have liked to see this knife without the lines, but you know, it's not, I can't make requests. It's discontinued, and it's just going to be what it is. Nice chamfering all the way around. A couple of areas that are a little bit angular, especially up here. This area is kind of sharp. I remember that being the case on the Python as well. Back here, this is all nice. This area down here, a little angular but not sharp, right? No insane hot spots or anything like that. Ergonomically, so back here, this is comfortable, but you're a ways away from the blade. I find myself wanting to hold it like this, but what happens is my index finger's here, my middle finger falls kind of right there, and it's like the knife wants you to hold it here. You hold it up here, and then you find this middle finger's in this weird spot where there's kind of a gap where your index finger is you know, supposed to fall. So this is okay. This is the only time you might be contacting that sharp point, but you know, if I was going to be doing a lot of heavy cutting against thick cardboard or something like that, I'd really want to choke up on it. It's not uncomfortable, it's just a little bit awkward. Down here, you're definitely locked in. This area is going to get a little bit sharp on your index finger. If you're wearing gloves, it's not going to bother you, but it's nothing crazy. That's just what I'm feeling. Taking a look at the blade, this is beautiful. Beautiful blade. By the way, no, this is not the standard edge. I think that these are a little bit thick behind the edge, you know, from the factory. You can see this massive flat taking up more than 50% the height of the blade. Not a lot of room to drop down to the cutting edge, and it is fairly thick at 150 thousandths or so, so you could imagine, you know, that generally yields some decent thickness behind the edge. The standard factory version, is it going to be too thick to cut? No, it'll definitely cut. It'll do your EDC test. It's just not going to be as, you know, as efficient as an Open L number 8, right? So take that for what it's worth, I guess. The person who owns this, or perhaps, you know, somebody before Antec maybe put this edge on it, and it's very beautiful, right? And they've obviously managed to thin it up just a little bit. It's going to be a little bit more of a performer that way. But standard from the factory, I've heard that these were a little bit thick behind the edge. Not really that big of a deal. We have more of this dark tumbling continuing down the blade, and the blade is made out of S90V. Do I think that's appropriate for this knife? I don't know. You know, S90V was kind of looked at in a different light back when this knife was really popular. S90V and S110V were kind of hailed as, oh my god, you know, these amazing steels that have the amazing edge retention, and so, you know, they're stainless, they're very edge retentive. I'm sorry, that's not a word. They have excellent edge retention, but they are not tough. They can be chippy. These are really hard steels. They're, you know, essentially if you get a chip in S90V or you know, a steel that's similar, it's going to be kind of difficult to sharpen back out. And here lately, S90V and S110V are still considered very, very premium steels. It's just people are kind of, you know, after using these knives for years, people are kind of, it seems general consensus is, I'd rather have a steel that's easier to sharpen and doesn't hold an edge quite as long, or is more likely to roll instead of chip. And that's kind of my opinion as well, right? But again, this is discontinued. It just is what it is. It's going to be fine. If you're confident in sharpening S90V, then yeah, you're going to be okay. Fortunately, the shape of the blade is going to make that process less difficult than a blade that was a Tanto or a recurve or something weird like that. It's got a nice normal, I guess, normal, right? If we want to call this sort of a clip point, it's just very beautiful. It's very aesthetically pleasing. You can see Taichung, Taiwan, which is where this is manufactured. I know a lot of people like to make sure that they're buying your knives from the United States. I guess people who watch my channel, you guys are primarily from the United States. You can support manufacturing from whatever country you want. For anybody who doesn't know, the U.S. makes great, like Spyderco's U.S. plant makes great knives, but their Taichung, Taiwan plant is known for having, you know, really the best fit and finish, the best quality of any of the Spyderco knives. And after handling tons from both sides, I would say, yeah, that is definitely the case. There is a noticeable difference in quality from the Taichung, Taiwan Spydercos versus the U.S. Spydercos. Is that something that you should pay extra for? It's entirely up to you, right? The blade is extremely handsome. That's, in my opinion, that is definitely the best part of the knife. I just really, really like the blade. No sharp edges up here, anything like that. You're going to be able to do your puncture tasks. I mean, this is a very utilitarian blade shape for sure. It's just going to be a little bit thick. Might slow you down a little bit while cutting, but nothing too crazy. Lots of traction here on the jimping. It's not too sharp, but it's just sharp enough. If you're wearing gloves, it's really going to be accentuated. Moving down to the back of the handle, I really like how integrals look at the back because it's just all one solid piece of titanium. It just looks nice. Is this stronger than a standard frame lock with a pillar construction or sandwich construction? I don't know, right? It's all going to come down to the lock strength and the geometry and stuff like that anyway. So you could say that there's extra structural integrity in an integral versus you know, a frame lock with a pillar construction, but it's really just going to come down to the lock strength, and that's going to be about the same. I think a titanium frame lock is plenty strong for the normal tasks that you would throw at this knife, so it is what it is. Pocket clip, I heard this before and I agree with people. I don't understand why they put this standard Spyderco pocket clip on some of these knives. This knife, the Paisan, a lot of other models, you know, that cost a lot of money and have a really interesting, very beautiful aesthetic and very unique aesthetic. I don't know why Spyderco slaps that pocket clip on there. There's nothing wrong with the clip. It's okay. It used to be one of my favorite clips, but I've experienced so many clips that I like more, I've just kind of grown out of it. It's okay. It's just, I want this to have its own clip that goes along with the design, right? So the clip, I mean, I can feel it, I guess, in my hand. It's not necessarily a hot spot, right? It carries deep enough. It's not a deep carry clip. There's not an enormous amount of the knife sticking up out of your pocket, so it's okay. It's just, I just wish that it was a special clip. That's honestly what I think. This does not have a steel lock bar insert, and it does not have an over travel stop. But like I said, there's a lot of tension on that lock bar, and it would take quite some effort to accidentally bend it out. I don't really care about that. I believe the lock face is carbonized, and that's going to help reduce wear over time. This is locking up pretty late. It looks to be locking up at about 80%. Honestly, I don't know if that's typical for the Nirvana. There is no lock stick. It's not difficult to disengage, and there's plenty of room to engage that you know, that frame lock there with the cutout here, so it's easy. There's no, you know, you really have to get your finger out of the way, by the way, because there's so much cutting edges coming straight down to your finger, but it's not so smooth that you have to really worry about that. But anyways, don't know if this is typical or not. It's still functioning just fine, so I wouldn't worry if yours is in this position. I mean, these guys have been discontinued for a bit, so it's likely whoever has owned them has been playing with them, and that lock bar has been sort of settling in. Once titanium lock bars settle in, you know, they might move a little bit or maybe even a lot initially over the first year that you own them, but once they settle in, they sort of work harden, and it takes a lot longer for the knife to move, you know, the same amount of space over time, so you should be okay. I wouldn't worry about that too much. It is definitely solid. There's no play in any direction, and the blade is perfectly centered. This is a really, really cool knife. Little things that I can nitpick. I mean, it's definitely that there's too much flat here. I mean, it looks nice, but essentially with the blade stock thickness being what it is, it just doesn't leave enough room for it to come down to a, you know, a really, really thin cutting edge. But it's okay. It's fine. It's not really that big of a deal. The S90V on here, a lot of people like just having an ultra premium steel on a knife that is considered ultra premium by a lot of people, so that's fine. I probably would have preferred a different steel, but again, what am I going to do now? It's discontinued. You know, it is what it is. I would have liked to see this without the lines. That's a personal nitpick. Don't like the pocket clip. That's the one thing that I really think is just a missed opportunity with this knife. It's not like it, again, it can't be changed now. It's discontinued. But I really would have loved to see, I mean, I honestly could wave off any other little nitpicks I have about this knife if they had just changed the pocket clip. The bearing thing is a little bit weird, but I have not experienced any, if that truly is the case, I have not experienced any issues with other knives that I've got where the bearings are running directly on titanium. I will say, be careful if you're going to disassemble and reassemble this knife. If you crank down too hard, that's when it's going to cause a problem. Those hard bearings pressing into the titanium. Titanium is softer than steel, so that can cause a problem. You get those little indentions in the titanium, and that's what's going to create that bumpy action, right? That's oftentimes why there's a steel washer or steel surface for the bearings to ride on, whether they're steel or ceramic. So just be careful. Don't crank this thing down so hard, right? A lot of you guys have seen my video on the centering trick, and I talk about one of the things that you do actually to get that centered up. One of the steps is actually to crank the pivot down all the way. In the case of this guy, I would be very, very careful of that, but I'm going to assume that most of them have come perfectly centered, so you won't have to worry about that. I don't know that there's much else I can say. Is this knife worth picking up right now for what it originally went for? There are a lot of knives you can get in this price range. You know, considering this is not a US made knife, right? If you're considering this, then you're probably considering other non-US made knives. You can get some amazing stuff for 450 bucks. You can get some amazing stuff that is US made for 450 bucks. So is this knife worth chasing down now? If you find somebody who's willing to let this thing go for less than, you know, what it went for brand new, and they're actually offering one that's really, you know, that's in perfect condition, then yeah, I mean, if it's worth it to you, then go ahead. But if this is one, I don't know, but if this is one of those knives where people try to charge, you know, like way more than what it originally went for, I would say no. You know, wait. Spyderco, I'm sure, well, at least I hope, will continue to work with Peter Rosenti, and there's surely more to come down the road that people will really, really like. So yeah, you know, just I wouldn't overpay for this. I'm not a big fan of anybody overpaying for a knife in the secondary market. This knife is good. It doesn't blow me away. Even back then, for what they were asking for it, I would have been like, nah, I don't think so. You know, but it's still a really good knife, and it's a great. And it looks really, really good, and it definitely functions well. I mean, this is a knife that I would absolutely take out and trust. So, is this a utilitarian cutting tool? Is it dependable? Is it well made? Yes, yes, yes. This is a knife that I find really, really aesthetically appealing. It's not one of my favorite knives in the entire world, but it's close. Honestly, if the lines weren't on there, I would have really loved this. So, you know, it's not going to go on the favorite knives playlist. It's not going to go on my most recommended, considering it is discontinued and is likely still very, very expensive on the secondary market. But I will include it in my Spyderco Knives playlist. This is a great knife. You know, functionally a fantastic knife. Thanks again to Antec 7 for letting me take a look at this, guys. That's going to be pretty much it for today's knife review / knife overview. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.